bought it in a charity shop. It's the Reader's Digest Yesterday's Britain book, and it goes through each decade from 1900 through to the 1970s, and I did a video looking at each decade through the ages. But it seems I've been a little remiss because I thought I'd finished the book, but just this week I had a comment from one of my viewers to say that I hadn't done the 1960s. So I've looked back, and yes, you're quite correct, the 1960s is missing. So I'm going to put that right today. We are going to look through these pages and enjoy some nostalgia, looking at the 1960s in Great Britain. I hope you enjoy. Well, here we have it, the missing chapter, 1960 to 1969. Power to the people. Just love the fashions of this era, and the caption here says, sipping coffee on the curb in the King's Road, Chelsea in 1967, which is the year I was born. So this decade is very close to my heart. The miniskirt, little caption here which says, hemlines went up so far it became a kind of national joke, but the diminishing miniskirt suited leggy model types rather better than it did the average girl in the street. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, but yeah, everybody wore miniskirts, I know that for sure. Carnaby Street was not just a collection of shops, it was a lifestyle. I love a trip to Carnaby Street even now. It still has the feeling of bohemian 60s. So, very, very fashionable London store at the time was Bieber. That's, I believe, a photograph of the inside of Bieber. Love this, look at this. Looking at the rise of fast food, I suppose, the very early days of fast food anyway. Got a picture here of a Pizza Express menu, but interestingly the logo doesn't seem to have changed from a very quick look at that. It looks pretty much the same as today's. So the little bit above here says ready to order. London was in the vanguard when it came to eating out. Pizza Express, launched in 1965, offered an excellent choice of wines with its meals. And Wimpy, sure we're all familiar with Wimpy, first opened in 1954. Every table had the squeezy red tomato-shaped sauce dispenser and stand-up menus. I seem to remember going to London with my parents in probably about 1973, and I definitely remember eating at a Wimpy restaurant. It was just so different to the food we had at home. So indeed there is beers and wines on the menu here at Pizza Express. And the here of the very famous model Twiggy, looking very lovely there. And Mary Quant, very, very famous brand of clothes and makeup. I seem to remember Mary Quant adverts. These little false eyelashes, which are very much back now, that look anyway, of the big, thick lashes. We got the, talking about the fashions for dance. Twisting the night away. The dance craze which swept the country in the early 60s was strictly for the energetic. Chubby Checkers' Let's Twist Again spent 30 weeks in the chart in 1961. Little poster here. The sensation of America comes to Great Britain. And I'm sure you recognise these fine fellows here. Jumping Jack Flashy. Despite their scruffy reputation, the Stones knew how to put on the style. Of course, you can't talk about the 1960s without mentioning the Beatles. Imagine living in the time of the Beatlemania. I was really too young to remember that, really. Talking about traffic here. Well, I didn't know traffic wardens first patrolled the streets of London in 1960. They looked after meters which were intended to regulate parking. They've always earned a very poor reputation, traffic wardens with motorists. Now, anyone my age remember parents in the glove box of the car? There was always a tin of travel sweets. They were in, this is a picture of travel sweets, but the ones I remember were round metal tins that were quite flat, and the sweets inside were usually boiled sweets, fruit flavoured, or barley sugar like these, covered in powdery sugar. And I love the look of this tin. Look at it. Air, sea, land. Little caption here. Even confectioners tried to tap into the fantasy of endless freewheeling fun. Barley sugar was believed to stave off travel sickness, and only the foolhardy set out on a journey without provisions. Now look at this picture. It shows the construction here of the M4 motorway on the outskirts of London. This is a residential street in Brentford, Middlesex, and you've got this, hard to believe, this enormous motorway being constructed. I've driven over this many times, and actually where I live in South Wales we had the other end of this motorway, the M4, being built on very similar flyovers at various points in South Wales. Port Talbot is one of them. You've got these little terraced houses dwarfed by great big flyover. But where would we be without the M4? And here we've got the 2 pages devoted to the mini car. So much affection for the minis. My cousin was a very tall man, older than me, and he loved his mini, and he must have been 6'4", something like that. I don't know how he managed to get in it, still of the Mini. So on the theme of transport, we are looking at the absolutely, now looking back, the destruction of the railway network in the UK. As more and more people owned cars, it was seen that the railways weren't needed as much, so a lot of these smaller branch stations and railway lines were cut, and the person who was charged with sorting all of this out was somebody called Dr. Beecher. And just where I live was a very industrial area full of mineral lines, which these days would be very useful commuter trains, but unfortunately under Dr. Beeching many of these were closed, the railways removed, and I'm sure a lot of us really wish that hadn't happened. And we've got these air hostesses here with the Concorde. I did go to see Concorde land at Cardiff Airport in the probably the early 80s. Absolutely incredible sight. Here we've got a photograph of the assassination of President Kennedy. Obviously I don't remember that, but as shocking probably at the time as the death of our own Princess of Wales, or Princess Diana as she was then. And again, incredibly sad disaster that happened in Wales, 1966, the Welsh mining village of Aberfan, and the waste tip which slid down the side of the mountain on a wet day in October smothered the school and killed 116 children and 28 adults. Yeah, just unbelievable. And I've visited that area in recent years, and there is still an air of dreadful sadness about the place, even after all these years. Just awful. We've got some political stories here, and the scandal, the perfumer affair, with Christine Keeler and Mandy Rice. What was her name? Mandy Rice Davis, shocked the country. Hippie as afters, as we called it, dessert after the main meal. Ski yogurt, you bought them individually. They weren't in multi-packs. My favourite was hazelnut, but I seem to remember these pots had almost false bottoms, because that looks like a nice big pot of yogurt, but your spoon would annoyingly stop somewhere here. They weren't as big as they led you to believe. And over this side we've got adverts for Habitat, Conran shops, and yeah, that's quite popular now, this sort of fashion, I suppose. Casserole dishes and these great big salt and pepper pots. I'm sure some things just never go out of fashion. I did have to smile at this little paragraph. You may know I'm actually got my own Avon online shop at the moment, and this little paragraph talks about Ding Dong Avon calling. Must be when it started in the UK. And we got a page of the adverts on television at the time. Turkish Delight, of course. Yeah, I love a Turkish Delight. We've got the Tiger for Esso Fuel. And of course, aimed at the housewife, all of these cleaning products. Fairy Snow laundry powder. And of course, Fairy Liquid. I remember these adverts for hands that do dishes. Mild green, Fairy Liquid. Obviously, to have a cleaning product, you needed Fairy in the title. Let's go back to the timeline of the 60s. So let's pick out a few dates. What have we got? In 1960, Princess Margaret marries Commander Anthony Armstrong Jones. 1961, the Beatles made their debut at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. And the space race, April 1961. Amazing. Imagine living during those years, putting a man in space and on the moon. I was so young. I remember in school they would put the television on in the afternoon to show a rocket launch, but I wasn't really old enough to understand what was happening. 62, where are we? August 1962, sex symbol Marilyn Monroe is found dead in her apartment. 1963, August, Britain, the Soviet Union and the USA sign a nuclear test ban treaty. Martin Luther King, black civil rights campaigner, tells a gathering of 250,000 people in Washington, "I have a dream." 1964, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali of course, becomes world heavyweight boxing champion. 1965, Winston Churchill dies. Films The Sound of Music, what a classic, love it. Songs For Your Love by the Yardbirds. 1966, John Lennon says, "We are more popular than Jesus Christ right now." Barclays Bank introduces the Barclay card, Britain's first credit card. 19 1967, the year I was born, of course. Britain's first satellite, Ariel the Third, goes into orbit. 1968, the passenger liner, the QE2, is launched. The manned moonshot